Has this ever happened to you? You encounter a man who, despite his seemingly impenetrable outer shell, reveals a profound, almost primal fascination with your presence. It's as if a hidden mechanism within him has been tripped, an ancient current awakened, drawing him into an orbit around you he cannot articulate, nor perhaps fully comprehend. This isn't merely infatuation, it's something far deeper, far more psychologically resonant. What you are witnessing in such moments is the stirring of his anima, the unconscious feminine archetype within the male psyche reaching out, yearning for its external counterpart. For centuries, across cultures and through the mists of time, the human psyche has woven tales of divine encounters, of muses inspiring greatness, of goddesses embodying the very essence of creation and destruction. Carl Jung, that profound cartographer of the soul, dared to peer into these depths, positing that within every man resides an inner woman, and within every woman an inner man. The anima is not merely a collection of feminine traits, it is the sum total of all the male's experiences with the feminine throughout his life, from his mother to every woman who has ever touched his emotional landscape. It is also the inherited, collective image of woman, residing in the deepest layers of the unconscious. When a man meets a woman who embodies aspects of his anima, a powerful, often irresistible pull is unleashed. This is why certain women can evoke such intense, almost obsessive responses in men, responses that defy logic and often bypass conscious will. He is not merely seeing you, he is seeing a reflection, a projection of his own inner feminine, a mirror to a part of himself he has perhaps long neglected, suppressed, or even feared. Consider the man who prides himself on his rationality, his stoic detachment, his unwavering control. He might be the epitome of masculine strength and self-sufficiency, yet beneath that carefully constructed edifice lies a vast, unexplored territory of emotion, intuition, and vulnerability. When a woman, perhaps through her very essence, her authentic expression of femininity, touches upon this hidden realm, it can feel both exhilarating and terrifying. The anima is not always a benevolent force. She can manifest as a siren, luring him towards emotional chaos, or as a goddess, inspiring him towards individuation and wholeness. The danger lies not in the anima herself, but in the man's unconsciousness of her influence. He projects his unacknowledged feelings, his unmet emotional needs, his longing for connection onto the woman before him. She becomes the canvas upon which he paints his inner world, a world he has yet to fully confront. This projection is not a conscious choice. It is an automatic, instinctual response from the deepest layers of his being. He may feel an inexplicable sense of familiarity, as if he has known her forever, a profound recognition that transcends ordinary attraction. This is the recognition of his own forgotten feminine, a part of himself seeking integration. The woman who becomes the object of this anima projection often experiences a curious blend of adoration and burden. She is placed on a pedestal, idealized to an almost impossible degree, yet simultaneously stripped of her true individuality. She becomes a symbol, a vessel for the man's internal drama, rather than being seen for who she truly is. This is why such intense initial attractions can often lead to disillusionment. The idealized image inevitably clashes with reality, and the man, faced with the true woman, may feel a sense of betrayal, not realizing that he was betrayed by his own unconscious expectations. Seneca and Marcus Aurelius, though they spoke not of anima, understood the perils of external attachments and the necessity of internal mastery. They cautioned against placing one's happiness or sense of self-worth in the hands of external forces, be they people or possessions. In the context of the anima, this means a man must turn inward to confront his own inner feminine rather than endlessly seeking her in the external world. He must bring his unconscious into consciousness, undertaking the arduous but ultimately liberating work of shadow integration. His shadow, that repository of all he deems unacceptable within himself, often holds the key to understanding his anima projections. Perhaps he suppresses his emotional sensitivity, his need for intimacy, his artistic inclinations, all qualities often associated with the feminine. When these qualities are denied, they don't simply vanish, they fester in the shadow, finding distorted expression through projection onto others. The man deeply ensnared by an unintegrated anima often finds himself in a perpetual dance of idealization and disillusionment. He seeks completion outside himself, believing that the right woman will somehow fill the void, soothe his anxieties, and grant him access to the emotional richness he feels lacking. This pursuit is a mirage, a fleeting shadow, for true wholeness can only be found within. The woman, caught in the crossfire of his unconscious projections, becomes a repository for his unfulfilled desires, his unacknowledged pain, and his unlived life. She is burdened with the impossible task of embodying an archetype, rather than being seen, truly seen, as an individual with her own complexities, desires, and flaws. This dynamic often manifests as intense, almost suffocating attention in the early stages, followed by a sudden withdrawal when the reality of the woman inevitably fails to match the idealized image. The man, unconsciously disappointed that his anima has not fully materialized in flesh and blood, may grow distant, critical, or even resentful. He blames the external world, the woman herself, for his internal discomfort, rather than recognizing the true source of his unease. For the woman experiencing this, it can be deeply perplexing and emotionally draining. She might question her own worth, her attractiveness, her very essence, when the truth is that she was merely a temporary screen for a man's internal movie, a story he needed to project before he was ready to write it himself. Consider the archetype of the divine feminine that echoes through countless myths and spiritual traditions. This isn't just about women. It's about a principle of creation, intuition, nurture, and wild, untamed energy that exists in the cosmos and, crucially, within both men and women. When a man meets his anima in the external world, he is, in a sense, encountering his own potential to connect with this deeper feminine principle within himself. But if he remains stuck in projection, he abdicates this responsibility. He asks the woman to carry the weight of his spiritual journey, a burden no single human being can or should bear. This is where the path to individuation becomes critical. It is the arduous, lifelong process of integrating the conscious and unconscious aspects of the self, becoming whole, authentic, and unique. For a man, this means acknowledging, embracing, and integrating his anima, not just projecting her onto every compelling woman he meets. The journey of individuation for a man often involves a profound confrontation with his own shadow. The shadow contains not only our negative, undesirable traits, but also our unexpressed potential, our unlived lives. For men, elements of the anima, empathy, emotional expression, vulnerability, artistic inclination, are often relegated to the shadow due to societal conditioning that promotes a more rigid, stoic masculinity. When these qualities are suppressed, they do not disappear. They manifest indirectly, often through a desperate, unconscious search for them in others. A man who refuses to engage with his own emotional landscape, who dismisses intuition, or who fears vulnerability, will likely be drawn to women who embody these very qualities, hoping to absorb them by proxy. But this is a parasitic relationship, not one of true connection and mutual growth. Stoic philosophy, particularly the teachings of Epictetus, offers a powerful antidote to this external dependency. Epictetus taught that true freedom lies in distinguishing between what is within our control and what is not. Our internal reactions, our thoughts, our values, these are within our control. The actions and perceptions of others, their ability to fulfill our idealized images, these are not. For a man to truly integrate his anima, he must detach from the compulsion to seek her outside himself and instead cultivate her qualities within. He must learn to be emotionally intelligent, intuitive, and vulnerable on his own terms, not as a reflection of another. This requires immense courage, a willingness to dismantle the egoic structures that have kept him safe, but also isolated. It means stepping into the discomfort of self-discovery, of facing the parts of himself he has long denied. Only then can he genuinely connect with a woman, seeing her for who she is, without the distorting lens of projection. Only then can he truly meet her, not just meet his anima. The profound, often unsettling encounter with a man's anima, whether projected or consciously acknowledged, is a crucible for the woman involved. She is asked, implicitly or explicitly, to navigate not only the complexities of the man himself, but the very real weight of his unintegrated inner world. This is why a woman's self-worth becomes her most formidable shield and her most potent guide in these interactions. Without a deeply rooted sense of her own value, she risks becoming entangled in the man's psychological drama, losing her own identity in the process of trying to fulfill his unconscious needs. A woman with robust self-worth understands that she is not responsible for a man's emotional well-being, nor is she obligated to be the embodiment of his idealized feminine. She recognizes the difference between genuine connection and the often intoxicating pull of a man's projection. When a man's attention feels overwhelming, almost too good to be true, it's often a red flag that his anima is heavily at play. His words might be extravagant, his declarations intense, but the foundation of such an attraction can be shaky, built on fantasy rather than a true appreciation of her unique self. This understanding allows her to maintain her emotional sovereignty, to observe the dynamic with a detached wisdom, rather than being swept away by the current of his desire. The path to cultivating this unshakable self-worth often involves profound trauma work. Many women carry the echoes of past experiences where their boundaries were violated, their voices silenced, or their true selves dismissed. These wounds can make them vulnerable to the magnetic pull of a man's anima projection, as the intense attention can temporarily fill a void or validate a longing for acceptance. However, this is a dangerous illusion. True healing comes not from external validation, but from courageous internal confrontation with one's own pain, grieving past losses, and reclaiming lost parts of the self. This internal alchemy is the true source of empowerment. As Epictetus might suggest, the only true power we possess is over our own internal state, our perceptions, and our responses. To allow another's unconscious projections to define your reality is to surrender that most fundamental power. For a woman, recognizing when she is merely a vessel for a man's anima requires sharp discernment. Does he truly see her, or does he see an idealized version of what he believes she should be? Does he engage with her complexities, her imperfections, her independent thoughts, or does he subtly or even overtly try to mold her into his unconscious image? The woman who operates from a place of deep self-worth will not tolerate being reduced to an archetype. She demands to be seen whole, flaws and all. She understands that genuine love is built on acceptance and respect for individuality, not on the fulfillment of unconscious fantasies. The sacred feminine within a woman is not something to be leveraged for external validation or to ensnare a man. It is an intrinsic force, a wellspring of creativity, intuition, and power that she cultivates for herself. It is the ability to nurture, to create, to connect deeply, and to stand fiercely in her truth. When a woman truly embodies her own sacred femininity, independent of male gaze or validation, she becomes magnetic, not because she fulfills a man's anima, but because she radiates a wholeness that inspires him to confront his own. She becomes a mirror, not just for his projections, but for his own potential for integration. This is the subtle, powerful alchemy that can occur when a woman stands fully in her own power, inviting a man not to worship an externalized ideal, but to engage in a genuine partnership built on mutual respect and shared growth. Her very being becomes an invitation for him to embark on his own journey of psychological maturity. The man who genuinely embarks on the journey of integrating his anima rather than projecting her endlessly begins a profound transformation. This is the essence of masculine individuation, a path fraught with challenge but ultimately leading to a more authentic and whole existence. He learns to identify the emotional currents within himself, no longer needing an external woman to validate his feelings or give them form. He discovers his own capacity for empathy, intuition, and vulnerability, not as weaknesses to be hidden, but as strengths to be cultivated. This internal work is not about becoming less masculine, but about becoming a more complete and integrated man, one who can navigate both the outer world of action and the inner world of feeling with equal mastery. This journey often begins with a moment of crisis or profound introspection, perhaps the repeated patterns of failed relationships, the nagging sense of emptiness despite external achievements, or a sudden, inexplicable emotional upheaval forces him to look inward. This is the call to adventure, echoing Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, where the hero must descend into the underworld of his own psyche. For the man, this underworld often holds the neglected aspects of his anima, his unmet needs for intimacy, his suppressed creativity, his fear of emotional depth. He must confront the ways in which he has externalized his inner world, placing the burden of his emotional development onto the women in his life. The integration of the anima is not a one-time event, but a continuous process of self-awareness and self-mastery. It involves delving into his dreams, which often offer vivid, symbolic representations of his inner feminine. It requires engaging in practices that cultivate introspection, such as mindfulness, journaling, or even creative expression. He learns to differentiate between his own authentic feelings and the echoes of past projections. He begins to see women not as archetypal figures designed to complete him, but as unique, complex individuals worthy of respect and genuine connection. This shift in perception is revolutionary, transforming his relationships from unconscious power dynamics into conscious partnerships. The Stoic wisdom of Marcus Aurelius becomes particularly relevant here. His emphasis on internal locus of control and the impermanence of external things teaches the man to find stability not in the fluctuating presence of a woman, but in the unwavering principles of his own character. He learns that true happiness is not derived from another's adoration, but from the cultivation of virtue, wisdom, and emotional resilience within himself. This detachment from external validation is not coldness, but a profound act of self-possession. It frees him from the desperate neediness that often accompanies unintegrated anima projections. For the woman who encounters such a man, the transformation is equally profound. When a man has begun the arduous work of integrating his anima, the dynamic shifts from one of projection and idealization to one of mutual recognition and respect. He no longer needs her to carry his emotional burdens. Instead, he approaches her as a sovereign being, capable of engaging in a relationship built on genuine reciprocity. This allows the woman to lower her defenses, to shed the armor she may have developed to protect herself from being an object of projection. She can truly be herself, without fear of disappointment or the pressure to conform to an idealized image. This is the promise of conscious relationship, two individuated souls meeting in a space of authenticity, vulnerability, and shared growth. The dangerous pull of sacred femininity transforms into a sacred dance of two complete beings, each contributing their integrated masculine and feminine energies to the partnership. It is a dance of true equality, where neither is attempting to complete the other, but rather to inspire and uplift.
The true liberation for a woman when confronted with the dynamic of a man's anima lies in recognizing that her worth is intrinsic, not contingent upon his perception or projection. This is the ultimate act of emotional freedom, a declaration of sovereignty over her own inner world. It means understanding that the intense, almost overwhelming attention from a man who is projecting his anima is not necessarily a testament to her unique beauty or spirit, but often a mirror reflecting his own inner landscape. When he idealizes her, she understands that he is idealizing a part of himself he has yet to integrate. When he withdraws, she understands that he is withdrawing from an internal dissonance, not necessarily from her inherent value. This understanding allows for detachment from external validation. The woman ceases to anxiously scan for approval, for reassurance, for the fervent gaze that once felt so intoxicating. She learns to cultivate a rich inner life, a deep well of self-acceptance
Cannot be depleted by the shifting tides of external attention. She recognizes that the grand gestures and passionate declarations, while seemingly flattering, often come with an unseen price tag, the expectation that she fulfill an unconscious role. By refusing to play this role, she reclaims her agency. She chooses to be seen, truly seen, or not seen at all. This journey is deeply intertwined with the principles of Stoicism, albeit applied through a feminine lens. Just as Epictetus urged the distinction between what is within our control and what is not, the empowered woman learns that the man's perceptions, his projections, his internal struggles, these are not hers to manage or internalize. Her control lies in her own responses, her own boundaries, her own commitment to her authentic self. She learns to observe the phenomena of the anima at play without becoming entangled in its drama. She can witness the man's inner journey with empathy, perhaps even compassion, but without allowing it to define her own. This sense of rebirth and inner peace arises when a woman sheds the burden of being someone else's ideal. She stops striving to be the muse, the savior, the perfect embodiment of a man's unconscious fantasy. Instead, she turns inward, nurturing her own sacred feminine, not for external display, but for her own fulfillment. This means honoring her intuition, embracing her emotional depth, cultivating her creativity, and standing fiercely in her truth, even if that truth does not align with the man's expectations. This internal realignment is a powerful act of reclamation, retrieving fragments of self that might have been lost in the pursuit of external validation. The woman who has done this profound internal work radiates a different kind of magnetism. It is not the magnetism of a blank canvas waiting for a man's projection, but the magnetism of a complete, sovereign being. She is attractive not because she fulfills an archetype, but because she is an archetype unto herself, unique, whole, and unyielding in her self-possession. Her presence invites a man not into a dream, but into a reality of authentic connection, challenging him to meet her on the elevated ground of conscious relationship. She embodies the quiet strength that comes from knowing who she is, independent of anyone else's gaze or desire. She understands that the most profound relationship she can cultivate is the one with herself.